Prasad, good morning to you. And it's so important, I think, at the best of times to understand what our various ministers from the countries are talking about. But I'm sure you'll agree with me, the big talking point surely has to be the vaccines that are coming to South Africa from India. Or would you disagree with me?
Well, I think you're right. Good morning. It is a very important meeting, considering the fact that the BRICS has not been very active in the post-COVID situation. Nonetheless, the foreign ministers meet today in a virtual format. And as you rightly said, top of the agenda is how does the BRICS respond to both recovery of in the cooperation in the COVID and also the economic recovery. Remember, BRICS, of course, the formulation was the emerging economies of the world last decade. Much has flown since then. Vaccines are important, but right now, India has hit the pause button, if I were to say so, largely because of production issues and the second wave of pandemic that hit India very hard. India is ramping up its vaccination program. Only on Monday, the government did tell the Supreme Court that by end of this year, it plans to vaccinate all adults. That being the case, but nonetheless, efforts are on to increase the vaccine production. We have currently 3 sets of vaccines going on in this country. Of course, AstraZeneca, which you are aware. And the second is an Indian manufactured Covaxin. And the third, which is now coming, is the Sputnik, the Russian Sputnik, which has started making the third, the trials have begun, the emergency use have been given. So one has to see, because Russia, India, and China are 3 countries in the BRICS which have vaccines among themselves. So India, of course, is also part of another effort to supply in the Indo-Pacific, as you're aware, as part of the Quad initiative, where commitments of finances from the United States and Australia, Japan, and of course Australian logistics to supply vaccines in the Indo-Pacific region. Well, that's where we stand. Surely it's a pause button, but that's not going to be very long.
No, I'm sure it wouldn't be, and I'm sure South Africa will be excited to hear that pause button won't be hit very long. Prasad, let's talk a little bit about the relationship between the BRICS countries, especially during a pandemic like this. And I'm referring to the pandemic because I'm sure it's going to be the talking point. Yes, there's always inter-BRICS cooperation and sustainable development. Yes, important, but within the discussion of BRICS, where do you believe, in your opinion, does South Africa lie in the totem pole, the ranking of importance within BRICS and the importance of getting vaccines here? Remembering, and you just alluded to it, there's possible vaccines from Russia and China and, of course, India, as we discussed. Where is South Africa, in your opinion, of the importance within BRICS?
Well, one of the biggest contributions that South Africa would like to be on the table is, of course, working through other 4 countries in the economic recovery. Because vaccines are where we are, the production being we just discussed. But yes, economic recovery is going to be the biggest challenge, and one of the big areas that most countries are trying to look at, how will the new world emerge in the post-COVID era? And so where would South Africa come and bring to the table in terms of economic recovery, and what India has been talking about in the world formats and other fora is a resilient global supply chains. So that's one of the big areas everybody is looking at. So I'm sure that South Africa, with its economic work in progress, will bring that to the table.
And when we take a look at what we're expecting the various ministers to be discussing, let's now move across to the issue of sustainable development. Do you think that sustainable development is really on the agenda now? I know you mentioned that discussions are going to take place around a post-COVID world, and we're all looking forward to that, of course. But where does sustainable development in the dialogues of BRICS rank? Is it just something that it should be discussed because it's generally what's discussed, or is there real emphasis on sustainable development?
Well, I think you're right. When it should not be a bucket list that we have to tick, but surely it is on the agenda, because the agenda, what I hear, is the technical solutions to sustainable development goals. Now, look, India is in pushing for a digital economy, and that's where India has a forte. And I think that's one of the reasons, because sustainable development goals are long-term commitments made by all countries. So adherence to it will be important, both in terms of facing the global challenge, especially on the climate change. So SDGs are very important, having committed. So I think one of the things is the technical solutions, can that be made available to member countries? And I think that's going to be there. And added to it is one more important is the counterterrorism, which has been a standard format, and reforms in the multilateral institutions. Now, India, if you know, is pushing for a very long time for a change in the Security Council setup and also in the UN reform. So UN, of course, is, and I think what I quite forgot to mention, probably you will be aware, what is most very important on the vaccine is the cooperation between South Africa and India in getting the TRIPS waiver. I think about 100 countries are putting across their might, and with the United States already supporting the thing, that's very, very possible. And I think that's all of us should look forward to that.
Yeah, three big things coming out of this virtual meeting, it seems like. Prasad, what a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving us insight into how this virtual platform, this virtual meeting is going to take place. Prasad Kunduri, former senior associate editor at the Tribune India. This BRICS virtual summit, not just about the vaccines, of course, a big talking point about when South Africa is going to get more from India.